So welcome back to our next session on analytics talent, how to build systematically in your organization. We have with us today Mr. Dakshinamurthy, who's a rare combination of educator, consultant, scientist, and entrepreneur. He is one of the founders of InSophie, which is currently rated number 3 in the world for big data education by CIO.com. He consults with Fortune 500 companies from pharma, insurance, retail, and manufacturing. He's helping startups and Fortune 50s build centers of excellence in data science. Please join me, welcome Mr. Dakshinamurthy this morning.
Hello, am I audible? Great. Thank you very much, Cypher, for giving me the opportunity to talk about this topic. But I should start with a confession. Normally, I speak about much simpler and easier topics. The last one that I talked about was comparing the performance of a convolutional neural net with a radial basis function kernel. That's a lot easier. It's just simple math. However, when I was given a topic of this magnitude, initially I even felt, people must have cracked it. And I talked to a few of my colleagues in industry. How exactly do you go about building this? 1 minute. Building talent in your organization. And they said, hey, we just hire a IIM or an ISB to lead and hire a few IITs and ISI stats guys to do cool things. Put them together in a room. Won't that do the job? Might actually, So with that much of novelty or lack of novelty, whatever you may want to call, let me now try to share my experiences on how probably differently an organization should go about building analytics talent if it really wants to make the difference. While I was given a good introduction, I still feel I need to justify why you should spend the next half an hour with me. Yes, of course, I do represent International School of Engineering, a well-ranked university and all, institute and all. But still, when was the last time a professor gave anything relevant to a business, right? Why should you spend the next half an hour listening to a professor on how you should build your teams? Well, I did spend quite a bit of my time, probably more than 50% of my time, in working with corporates, doing their training and building their analytics teams. So I know where they are focusing, what they are doing right, and probably the points they are missing. I have a first-hand experience of working with various sizes of L&D and HR departments that are striving to build analytics organizations in their companies. And I would like to share what I learned from there. And of course, as part of InSophie, we spend substantial amount of our time on our CPR, consulting product R&D activities. And as a first-hand execution team, we learned what kind of teams worked when, what kind of teams failed when, how we could have done better in situations where we failed. So I'm going to rely on the experiences that I gained from those two and share with you today. In a nutshell, I want to start with busting a couple of myths that we learned the hard way. And then I will talk about the gray areas that we keep finding whenever we want to build an analytics organization. Those two coupled with the right business model, can probably lead us to a systematic way of building talent in the organization. That's the hope that I take with me today. So let's start with the myths. The thing that I hear quite often is that, this Hadoop, Spark, all those zoo animal things are really scary. They are not. If they probably were 10 years back. If anything, they are getting easier. They're easier for the technologies. Spark is easier than ever to use. Hive is easier than ever to use. That's one reason. But more interesting reason is, the more the data you have, the easier it is to get insights from it. Even a simple average can throw so much of insight about the data if you are dealing with extremely large volumes of data. Average height of an Indian could be probably an enormously useful thing. And it's fairly easy to compute. In fact, if I were to rate one of the toughest projects I worked on, this was when I was working for defense, we were looking at identifying patterns for the failure of a nuclear reactor. And there were 6 nuclear reactor failures in the last century. It's one of those problems where we didn't say we wish we had more data. We were glad we had only 6 records. But imagine 6 records, what statistics we could do. So big data is glamorous, it's great, but it's easy. In my experience, any software engineer with 3 to 4 months of appropriate training and practice can get started. And of course, they can develop and grow, but that's not something that holds an organization to build an analytics team. Nano data, on the other hand, brings me to the second topic, which is math is scary. Interestingly, even I wish that was true, actually. Every grain of mine says, that's my bread and butter, right? But unfortunately, it's getting easier than ever, thanks to the APIs and all the open source tools. Recently, I was working with, I was talking to a R&D lab, and those guys said we applied this long short-term memory recurrent neural network on this data and got industry benchmarks. And can you explain what the hell we did? It's really easy to do an extremely complex neural net without having a clue of what you are doing. That is the power of the ease of software, as some of the panelists before mentioned. It's getting easier and easier day by day. So my biggest learning in studying these organizations is that the easier part in building an analytics talent is to build the analytics talent. Now, the gray area. The gray area, I think it has been mentioned already in various ways, but then it's like Ramayana. It's so important that so many people can write in so many of their own words and it still becomes relevant after thousands of years. The grayest area is the guy who gets it, the functional, the business guy. And I will give, from my past experiences, at least 3 different major requirements for the success of an analytics organization that this functional manager has to build in. Around 5 years back, I worked on a telecom project. It involved looking at some millions of signals from their base stations and predicting the failure of some failure, service level agreement failure. Yeah, so some SLA failure. So look at all my alarm signals and tell me in advance whether my SLA will be up or down. Something like one of the speakers said, tell me whether my email will open up or not. Like that, tell me whether I will have a failure or not. That involves studying millions of rows of data and sequential pattern mining, downward closure property. Oh, wonderful math, and we did all that. And successfully, we submitted the project. While coming back, I was stopped over by a firm that does merchandise shipping. So he asked me, Dr. Murthy, can we do something in analytics? And in the hangover of that success that I just had, I said, yes, of course we can do. And he asked me, what can we do? I said, you give me all the past records of your ships, and I will tell you which ship is likely to fail, where and how. I said, I was expecting him to just look at me with awe and respect and fall down on his knees and propose. But he looked at me and said, so what? So I was shocked. This was a hit. I said, what do you mean, so what? I will tell you when your ship will fail, man. He said, Murthy, let me explain to you my business. I have around 100 ships, and each ship on average sails 300 days a year. So 50 days it is on the shore. When it is on the shore, every day I spend $10,000. Of that, $6,000 go to insurance, which I have to do whether you predict failure or not, right? Remaining $4,000, $3,700 go into salaries of my people. Great. $270 or $260 will be my incidentals, the water, the food, etc. I pay service engineers $40 a day to come and check every component in my engine room. And you are telling me you will save a portion of that. You are not telling me how much you will charge for that, right? So really, why should I be excited? Yeah, for 100 ship owner, $40 a day for 50 days, that is $2,000 per ship, $200,000 a year. What ROI I am talking about? He said, oh, okay, man, I accept defeat. This really, really worked well in telecom, so it doesn't work in shipping. It's a news to me. I learned it the hard way. Complex mathematics may not excite business folks. Oh, really? Man, how can anyone not be excited? But that's the way it is. So then he actually said, I think we should attack the revenues. I make $100 million a year on my ship, and I have, $30 million a year on my ship, and I have 100 ships. So this is a $3 billion revenue. You increase it by 1%, you're talking about 30 million. Can we actually do something in that front? And then we sat for half an hour, we brainstormed, and finally what we realized is when he explained, and he was an extremely funny man, he explained, we are like cab drivers without ethics. He said, what do you mean by that? He said, we just unload our shipment and we look at the rate card there and we reload. Can you tell me anything about the rate card up front? Oh, really? What is there to tell? You look at the past 4 years of rate cards on the same day and sort of do an average. You should get a prediction for the next 1 week of most likely rate cards. And don't load if you know very certainly with a very high likelihood in a week your rate card is going to go up. Just keep your ship empty for a week. He loved it. He said, oh, this is something so simple. And of course, we can always complicate it as data scientists. We'll just not live with averaging. We'll then do a neural network on top of that with an exponential moving average and ensure that they are confused enough. But the point is a simple average could have done the job that the sequential pattern mining on millions of logs couldn't do. That guy who gets it at that point was the definition of success. And that is such a difficult skill to get. And as someone mentioned, as an organization, when we failed, math never failed me, engineering never failed me. It is this ability to ask the right questions and then ability to translate my results. This time I was working for a food company. Not McDonald's, but something like that. Those guys gave, the task there was to actually analyze some 21 of their factors in their balanced scorecard and see which one has the best correlation with their profits so that they can work more on that. And all the work was done. Some 1,500 outlets over 4 years with the 21 factors, with the profit, nice interesting models were built the last day before the presentation. The business user there and two of us were sitting there and we were discussing. And my data scientist was so pleased, you know. He did the variance inflation factors, L1 plus L2 optimizations. Wow, cool. I mean, 18 of the first 21 slides, anyone hardly knew what was happening there. You know, it was equation after equation. And this guy, at the end, the business person said, hold on, guys, you know, just know one thing. At the core of it, we sell coffee and burgers, right? We don't do this kind of math. Tell me what you have done. Right? Yeah, you're right. You know, how can this be told in any less elegance when it is such a nice equation? I mean, can't you see an L2 optimization? No, I can't. Tell me exactly what you did and why you did. Okay, the best that we could do, someone said, you know, it's not our job actually to see why it should work for you. You know, we threw the equation. Yeah, this is the equation. Do something about it. He looked at it and he said, yeah, this is 21 parameters with coefficients, so what should I do about it? Then we said, okay, we have to do something about it. And we looked at every aspect of the equation, and we didn't do that till now because it was never thought to be our job. And the most interesting insight we found in that was the amount of training had a negative coefficient to the profits. So if the training was more, profits were less. It's like after these 2 days of workshops, you all are less educated about data science. That doesn't sound right? You know, if we do our job right, that doesn't sound right. So what does that mean? So we went back to the data, frantically searched, because the next day we were to talk to the CIO and CMO. And that was a fact. Data didn't lie to us. Then he went back and he looked at, okay, what are we training people in? And the next day, he just threw away the entire work and he said, guys, here is the single outcome. Our training has a negative impact on our profits. Why is that? We are focusing a lot on our soft skills. We believe it is better if we employ our outlet guys with a nice conversational skill with the person. I believe we are wrong. That's what the data says. Probably we should focus on teaching them to make 2 burgers with 2 hands simultaneously. You know, they should become, nobody comes to our stores to have a chat with our sellers. They want to drive through, get the burger, walk off, or drive off. And that's what we should focus on, right? So again, you see, the whole project wouldn't have made any sense if that translation did not happen. And that doesn't come easily either. It's not only that our work had to be translated to them. Many a times, we need a translation of the impact that we are making too. This is, we worked on a telecom churn project recently. Someone was saying just before this talk that, you know, it's hard to find a project that doesn't give a 10-15% lift, which is very true. But it's not as impressive to a business user, that 10-15% lift, as it is to a data scientist, just because the way we measure lift is very different. There's a small thing here. See, we improved the performance from 63 to 75%. How much did I improve it by? For a business user, it's 12%, right? Right? 12%. But for a data scientist, it's actually 33% improvement. Why is that? We brought down the error from 37% to 24%, or 25%. That is 33 minus 25 by 25, or 33. You know, if I really want to make it higher, I should divide it by 25. So we measure our performance, and don't blame us for that. It's not that we want to, we're fame hungry. It is just that typically it is so difficult to get this 20-30% improvements on any well-done project that even a 10-15% improvement on the improvement is a substantial improvement. So someone gets 20% accuracy on a digital image recognition, I get 22% accuracy. I increased it by 10%, not 2%. And that lift is not understandable to a business user for two reasons. One, maybe it doesn't have any business impact. Then it doesn't have any justification. Two, it is just that you deal with numbers differently. So the gray area, as I found, whether in explaining the business problem or explaining our results or explaining the achievements of the data science, has been this guy who gets it. And that has been a species that's so difficult to find. And I tried every possible combination. The senior most of our data science team, I put in that role. It didn't work. For a few projects, I actually hired an external expert who doesn't know analytics, but in that business, he or she is the, that 60-year veteran. But then there was a problem. Generally, analytics teams are very small, 3-4 members. You have one 40-year veteran and three 2-year experienced software and the statisticians. It's like child marriage. They listen to, they just keep listening. I mean, they don't talk back, right? So that also didn't work. So I experimented, and I think I know some solutions. That's what I'm going to share. But nevertheless, I don't think this problem is solved yet. So given that, we know what is easy and we know what is difficult. How should we use this to build a team? Scenario one, staff arc companies. Honestly, this is the area where I worked least, but I interacted with a few of my colleagues here. One guy who I know definitely doesn't know anything about analytics is able to successfully build a 1,000-member team. The requirement there and the skill set there is very different. So you can ignore almost everything if this is your business model. Just go and hire your R, Python programmers, and I think you should be fine. Okay, but if provided you know how to do the staff arc business well. I will focus on what I probably understand better. This is a kind of a company which has a core specialization, pharma, manufacturing, whatever, retail, telecom, and they want to have an analytics center of excellence built in, right? Now, my advice, go top down. Don't start with hiring a team of R and Python programmers. Find your best business guys who don't mind going hands-on and train them. Of course, in analytics, you can train them. That organizations do. But more importantly, train them in positive attitude. Again, when I say positive attitude, there are two things. One, analytics can tell you things that you believe are absolutely right. They can crush your intuition, ego. And that requires a lot of courage to take. So prepare enough champions in your organization who can actually take something that they don't believe as truth. Then the other extreme, several times analytics can lead to a result that's not earth-shaking. It's just that 10% lift. Big deal. But even that is better. So one of the aspects that I find missing in champions is this ability to handle both extremes. It's not just that always analytics will thrill you with magically with all its results. Sometimes all you end up with is that 8.7% lift. Those of you who are familiar with Netflix know probably that they said, I want a 10% or more improvement in our recommendation engine. In the first 3 months, math was able to get 8%. Then they spent 2.5 years to get to 10%. At the end, they did get 10%, only to realize that the model was too complex to actually reject it, right? So sometimes you have to live with that 8%. Sometimes, yes, ground under you shatters. You should be able to take that. And most of the times, I find that even those internal to the business don't understand the entire business. So if you are championing an analytics problem, you may end up doing a problem from outside your vertical and domain. So you should be able to have that ability to think and understand the business aspects of the problem clearly. I think people are also calling that design thinking, whatever one calls it, that ability to handle a problem from any domain. And of course, storytelling goes without saying. So if you are an organization that wants to build a center of analytics, first identify amongst your talent those 5 or 6 guys who can be trained to champion this. And they alone should be the bridge between your analytics team and the rest. And then give them a team of your math and engineering and stat guys and your MBAs. Everything will go on all right. But having that investment in that team and giving them enough time to get up to speed, having them identify the problems is a very important step before you get into building a team. The last segment is if you are an analytics consulting or analytics product company, so where analytics is your sole revenue. You are not trying to improve your performance with analytics. Typically, I do work with companies, I help them. What I see is the biggest enemy for the analytics team there is their own pre-sales sales guy. So normally what happens in our sales training of analytics is, that airport management training kind of a thing. You have that 18-page book that has all the jargon of analytics, and they know only that. The deep learning and big data, then there are some catchphrases and catchwords. And this